at an appropriate moment, or at the end, we have a question and answer session. So please do, for everybody, mute your microphones if you are not one of the panelists. My name is Terry Carroll. I'm a board member of the Old Dominion. I am joined by my other panelists this month. I'm jumping ahead of myself. Let me talk about the Old Dominion first. Old Dominion hosts 3 rides in Virginia: the No Frills, the Old Dominion in June, and Fort Valley in October. No Frills is the first one coming up in April. I'll give a shameless plug. We are accepting entries for the No Frills ride. It's a 2-day event, and we offer lots of stuff. Intro 25, intro 30 and 50. Diane, am I right on 50, that? 50,
okay. 55, 30, ride and tie, and intro. And I will add to that plug that normally at this point we'd have 40 entries or more, and we only have 12. So please get your entries in.
Yep, get those entries in, folks. We'd love to see you there. Our rides are sanctioned by AERC, ECTRA, Oates, and Sarah. Your panelists tonight are Lonnie Newcomb, myself, Terry Carroll, Diane Connolly, and Dave Franklin. I will spare you reading the bios, but please take a look at the level of experience and years of expertise on this panel. Also behind the scenes, Bob Heldebridle, who is the president of the Old Dominion. He is our tech support for this fun event. And Lisa Troutman is working our chat room and will be helping facilitate your questions. So without further ado, this month's topic: how to pack like a pro, otherwise known as how to fit 10 pounds of stuff into a 5-pound bag. When we began discussing this topic, we thought it would be a super simple thing to discuss. And we realized there is more information than we can fit into a week's worth of talking. So our goal tonight is to kind of skim the surface of what you need to bring and some of our ideas on how you can pack those items. There is no way that we're going to touch on every single piece of stuff you've got to bring or every possible method of how to get it in your trailer, but we're going to share what we know. Some notes on packing. So just a little bit of my background outside of endurance. I worked in the professional organizing field for 17 years. And so I do have some ideas on packing. First thing you need to do is start with a plan. Doesn't matter what that plan looks like. Write it on a napkin, put it in a PowerPoint, laminate it. Don't write it at all, put it in your head. But you should have a plan of some variety. Before you start trying to put things into a space, clean it out so that you're not piling things on top of things that don't belong. Reduce the items to their smallest possible size. This becomes really important when you have a tiny rig pulled by a tiny vehicle and you want to get, enough items for, you and your family and 2 horses. Group like items together. That way, when you go looking for something, you're not looking for a spatula in a toolbox or a hammer underneath some blankets. Put everything that goes together with its friends. Use multi-purpose items whenever possible. We've got some fun pictures of crew members wrapped up in horse blankets. If an item serves more than one purpose, then it definitely gets a spot in the packing list. Packing with care allows for more items. Stacking things neatly definitely takes up less room than throwing them in a pile. Although at the end of a rainy, long event, there's usually a pile. Containers that fit together mean less wasted space. Labels help identify what you're looking for. I'm a crazy label lady. I like labels on everything. Some of the people that travel with me, namely my father, is always asking me why I am labeling things. It drives him out of his mind. So do what works for you, because there is no right way. Our purpose here is to give you some ideas and suggestions. We're not here to tell you that there's only one right way to do it. And we're hoping that maybe something that we say is going to have a light bulb go off for you that says, well, maybe I can do my stuff in this way. So that's our whole point here. Dave, do you want to talk about this topic, basics while you're on the road?
Sure, why not? Basic supplies while you're on the road. That is probably a topic that has started more knockdown dragouts than any of the rest of them, especially as Harry mentioned, Bob makes him crazy. This list could go on and on, but there's a handful of things I think we can all agree on that are basic. A spare tire for the truck and trailer. And as far as line is concerned, you should carry two, because there's no universal law that says you're not going to have more than one flat tire on a trip. Right, Lonnie? Jacks, tools to be able to change those aforementioned tires is always a good thing to have. I will say that a good lug wrench is a must. Cheap lug wrenches are nothing more than a knuckle buster, and that is definitely not fun. Small toolkit, general pliers, screwdriver, whatever you might need. Jumper cables or a little jumper pack is a good thing. Even if you don't need it, somebody else might. Road safety kit with flares. Everybody has duct tape, I think, and WD-40 is like those two things. Duct tape and WD-40 are the fix-all for everything. Weather-related items, be it an extra jacket, snow chains, whatever. You never know what the weather is going to be sometimes, and just be ready for it. It's better than being stuck out in it. Step ladder to be able to reach things. Headlamp with fresh batteries, and emergency stuff closest to the door. You don't want to have to empty out half the trailer to get your spare tire or your wrench. You've seen those people on the side of the road with all their belongings out on the side. Never any fun. Pre-flight
If I can
checklist.
interject
Things. Sure.
For those that have never had to change a trailer tire, your lug wrench for your truck will not necessarily fit the lugs of your trailer tire. It's really a good idea to get one of the, like he was talking about, the really good lug wrenches that are like a T shape that have 4 different size lugs, and check to make sure they fit the lugs on the trailer.
Very good point. Very good. Pre-flight checklist. Just like an airplane, you got to do it. The tire in that picture looked perfectly normal the day before that picture was taken. The tires had less than 10,000 miles on them, but they were 14 years old on a truck that didn't get used very often. One 12-mile trip to the gas station to fill up before hooking up the horse trailer, and that's what it ended up looking like. So definitely keep an eye on the tires. Tire pressure is the number one thing you can monitor. Underinflated tires are the number one cause of tire problems. And while we're on the vehicle, a couple lines down, the oil, make that all fluid, oil, transmission fluid, brake fluid. Those are part of what should be your normal maintenance items, but never hurts to give them all a good looking at before you leave. And I'll throw hoses and fan belts and all in with that as well. On your trailer, make sure the windows and doors are closed. Nothing worse than getting somewhere and finding out you've had a window torn off by a tree limb. Slide out, same thing. It's a little more obvious, but sometimes those do get overlooked. Make sure the ramp is up, or even your slide-in step for the living quarters, if you have that. The hitch, make sure the hitch is securely locked like it's supposed to be, that the pins are in place, emergency chains are hooked up. Just do a walk around. Make a little checklist either in your head or have it on paper. Some people do it each way. It just depends on what works for you. Next slide, Terry. These are just a couple examples of emergency road kit: flares, rechargeable triangle, orange vest, and then just some random first aid kits, things that's never bad to have with you just in case. Changing a tire, good possibility you may need a Band-Aid. Next slide. And that's just one of the many trailer jack drive on. If you got tandem wheels, if you got single wheels on a small trailer, it won't do you any good, but most all horse trailers are going to be tandem. So that thing's a lifesaver right there. It's very quick and easy to use and makes the job of changing the tire a lot faster and a lot simpler.
Awesome. Thank you, Dave. Lonnie, do you want to talk to us about home away from home for our horses? Do we have Lonnie?
She's been falling in and out. I know she's having problems
Uh-oh.
with her connection.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start. And if Lonnie joins us, then she can take over.
And can I ask, there's a couple people with their cameras on. Can you please make sure that your camera is turned off during this presentation? Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa.
Yeah, can you hear me? I think what I'm going to try is just turn everything off and then start back up again and see if that works.
Sounds like a plan, Lonnie. I'm going to get started and join us when you've got yourself squared away. All right. So one of the big things we talk about when we go camping with our horses is how do we keep those little fellas from leaving town while we go to sleep at night. Our basic items that we need for them is a containment system of some sort, fork, shovel, rake for cleaning up after them, a muck bucket. A lot of ride camps will let you collect your manure and leave it in a pile at the edge of the camping area, and then they come along with a bucket of some kind and collect it. And then they need water buckets and food buckets. So those are some things that you'll need to have when you are camping with your horse. Containment systems vary as much as the animals do. You can go with the tape fences that you can either electrify or not, depending on how crafty your beast is. Lonnie travels with the high tie system. That's her rig that you see there. Her animals are trained to high tie, and they do marvelously on that system. You've also got the fence panel systems that you can provide shelter for your animals in a number of different ways. You can, leave it without shelter and just have the pen, or you can add a pop-up in the area, or like we did at one of our camps where we knew we were going to have some rain. We made the pen around the back of the trailer, and as soon as the raindrops started coming, that little fella jumped right in there and made himself quite at home.
Terry, I think I'm back, but I'm sideways again.
Oh, okay. Well, can you talk to us sideways, Lonnie?
Oh, I absolutely can. I absolutely can.
Awesome.
So anyway, pay no attention. I'm having a hookup issue. But so a couple of things I wanted to say is as she says, containment is one thing, but the whole point of camping or having a home away from home is being safe and comfortable. Is you don't have, camping doesn't mean suffering, being wet, being miserable, being thirsty, etc. It's safe. It's safety for the horse, and comfort for you. And so the thing about containment is you do need to practice this at home. Is no matter what it is, there's no right answer. There's no one way. But how often have we been at a ride when somebody is sort of fumbling around and they've never used their electric charger before? They're trying to set up an electric fence, and they've never used their charger before, and they're not sure if their battery is charged. And you're thinking, you really think your horse is going to stay in there? I mean, it's so regardless of however it is you're going to do, whether it's this pop up and the corral panels on the one side or the trailer on the other side, or whether it's high ties, is practice it at home. And especially if you're going to be using electric, definitely put your electric pen up with your trailer or however you're going to do it inside your horse's fence at home, because they may not respect it. They may not think that it's worth worrying about. Is the first time we ever set up an electric fence is we made a little paddock, and the horse thought it was pretty funny, and she made a little hunter circle and just jumped right out because she thought that we were being pretty funny. So whether you're doing, I think, do we have pictures of high ties further on in the next one? I think is so there's no matter what anybody tells you, is one right way to do it, because I'm personally opposed to electric fence, but that's only because other people's horses, if they get loose in camp and start running, they can run right through your electric fence and take your horse out. I can't tell you that we do high ties, because you can see one of our horses is lying down here and the other one's standing guard, and they're very comfortable on them. They have a very big area to move around in. But again, those have faults too. I mean, the high ties, the strap of the high tie is attached to the high tie on the trailer with Velcro. So if the horse gets tangled up, then they can get loose. However, they can get loose. So I can't truthfully tell you that this is the best system ever. There's a million types of panels, and if I were personally gonna haul panels, and you'll see some ways in the next couple of slides how people how they fit them in the trailer. But if I were going to bother to haul a panel, I would go to Tractor Supply and I'd get the great big heavy ones, the 10-foot long ones or the 12-foot long ones, the steel ones that are. Many people have tremendous luck with PVC. They create fencing with PVC pipes, or they'll have aluminum fencing or something. And it just, whatever it is, you have to practice it at home. You have to practice it at home. So I personally like to have my horse tied to the side of the trailer. But I can't truthfully tell you that it's safer or better than whatever it is that you're using.
Yeah, and we have a question of what type of fencing have people had success with? And I think, Lonnie, you just answered that, is it really depends on the horse. Some horses respect electric, some horses do great on high ties, some horses need the Fort Knox kind of containment system. So it really depends on your horse and what they respect and what they're comfortable with.
Because we went to Oklahoma ride a few years ago, and we knew the horses were going to be traveling a long way and we're going to be there for several days. So we did use there was one of the pictures, the photos that she had earlier on with a horse under the pop-up, was that they were sort of widely spaced bars of aluminum. And again, my problem with that is that if a horse sticks its neck through there because it has an urge to stick its neck through there, it can pick its head up and then it can take out the whole panel. So what we did when we went to Oklahoma is we took that orange mesh fencing, like that rolls up really easily, and we just cable tied it all around the inside of the fence so he couldn't stick his neck through the fence. I mean, so it was lightweight, easy to carry, but he couldn't stick his neck or his feet or anything through the fence. So you just keep modifying. You try something, and if it works, great, keep doing it. If it doesn't, ask somebody else what they're doing and just keep changing it. I mean, every year you're probably going to do something a little bit differently than you did last year.
Okay.
Okay. Diane, you want to talk to us about how we're going to move this stuff?
Once you decide what your containment is going to be, the trick is to figure out how you're going to store it so that it's the first thing you're taking out. If you look at these 4 pictures, you see panels attached to the side of the trailer. You can go to a trailer dealership that can actually put mounts on the side of your trailer that are like shelving, and then you can put the panels onto that and strap them on. You see the panels in the bed of a truck. If you've got a tag along, this will work and you can get them out when you get there. If you have a gooseneck, this can still work as long as your gooseneck hitches in the middle of that those panels, but then you've got to unhook your trailer when you get there in order to get them out of the bed of the truck. The other is some of these metal panels now actually accordion into themselves, so they're only half as long when they're being traveling. And I've seen people put them in the bed of their truck and strap them to the front of the truck, so when they get to the ride, they can get them out of the truck and get them set up to get the horses off the trailer. If you notice the panels that are in the first stall there, if you are lucky enough like I have a 3-horse trailer. I usually am hauling 2 horses. That third stall is used for all of this packing. And if you notice that this is in the stall, but close to the exit door, so that when you get there, you can pull the panels out to make the corral. If you are doing the poles, you'll see that second picture from the left is poles stored in the manger storage. If you have mangers in your trailer and you have those side doors, the poles fit very nicely inside there and can easily be gotten out and set your panels up before you even unload the horse off the trailer. Another way to do your poles, I've seen them done in trash cans, and then the trash can is tied to the corner at that exit door on the trailer. Mary Coleman actually makes electric pole bags for putting them in there. Before I actually had this manger storage, I used to bungee mine all together and then stand them up in the corner of the trailer. If you'll go to the next slide, Terry. If you notice that there's really 2 pictures. What I want to point out on, so where those boards are on the left, those are actually leveling boards. So something I wanted to talk about packing the trailer is what you want to do is think about what you need when you first get there. And that's what you want at the easiest place to access them. If you'll notice the plug outlet, the adapters hanging up there on those hooks at the top, but those boards are actually leveling boards so that they can be brought out to level the trailer. And then a lot of people, if they've got the poles and don't have your manger storage, you'll see their poles right there at where my leveling boards are. That way you can get them out without having to get the horses out and open up your divider and climb in to that first stall. You'll also notice very close to the door there are the buckets. And I want to speak to that as far as packing a trailer and saving space. I often have people travel with me and they used to bring their own buckets. Well, then their buckets didn't fit inside my buckets. And then their buckets were kind of stacked up on top of everything. So over the years, I got all the same brand, if you want to call it, buckets, both muck buckets, 5-gallon buckets, and quart buckets that all fit inside each other and fit, therefore, like the 5 inside the mucks and vice versa. And they all fit right there. So whoever travels with me does not need to bring buckets, but it simplifies that packing, as Terry talked about on one of the first slides, is consolidating to save space. So by having all the same kind of buckets that'll stack on top of each other or in each other, it saves tons of space. The other thing that you'll see there, the feed pans are on top of my my poles, the electric poles. So those do have to come out before I pull the poles out. You'll also notice kind of covered up by the bucket sign, but the white buckets there beside the muck buckets, those are all the same kind of buckets, all the same kind of lids, so they stack very nicely on top of each other. Again, as Terry talked about earlier, saving space if you can stack and have all the same kind of thing. So you're trying to pack your trailer, think about packing your trailer, think of that. Either all rectangular buckets that stack on top of each other, all round buckets that will stack on top of each other. I don't know if you can tell from this picture, but if you use that first stall for storage, what's very beneficial is to have ties in there. And it's very beneficial to have hooks, but you have to think about where they're positioned for safety of a horse in case you ever are putting a horse in that stall. So all my ties that are in the corners and halfway down the wall and up high that hold up the canopies and all that, they are the receded kind. So if I took everything out of that and those D-ring ties drop down inside themselves and are flush, so a horse can't get themselves caught on it. Those hooks way up high, it's way up there, but I don't trust my horses. I've had put a horse in that stall before. I cover those hooks with pool noodles. and duct tape them on. So there's no way a horse can get caught on it. There's now systems that you can get at Home Depot that are very flush to the wall, and then the hooks slide into them to create the hooks. But then if you're not actually using it for containment and storage, you can take them out, and the stall is then safe for a horse. Anyone want to add anything? The biggest I can say is having what you need when you first get there near that door, that you can get it out without having to gut the whole stall. Grooming tools, different people do different things. These are organizers on the door of the tack room. I've also got the organizers on the side in those manger doors, so that if I have someone traveling with me, their grooming tools can be in those organizers. You notice all these spray bottles down below. That's, one of those tool trays. I used to have, and I'm sure a lot of people have, is a grooming bucket that just has everything they need in the grooming bucket, that they can carry it to wherever their horse is tied to groom their horse. Anyone want to add?
And yours is a fancy horse brand. The one I have in my tag-along trailer is a cheap shoe organizer from Walmart, and it works
that's what,
just nice.
Yep, and that's what's in my small everyday trailer. They work great, the shoe organizers.
Yep, you can fit all kinds of things in there.
And I just want to say, some of our wonderful people who are listening in have provided some ideas on some fencing that they use also. And then we also have a comment that said, I had to make a raincoat for my door for all the rain we've had. My blankets on the door get wet.
That makes sense. See, we are an ingenious crowd, we endurance riders.
Right. Yeah, and the next thing besides the buckets and the grooming tools, probably what takes up the most room besides your containment is your hay. If you don't have that first stall, then bagging the hay, or I actually will double bag my hay so they can put it onto the bed of your truck. Some people store their hay up on top of their trailer. If you've only got a 2-horse trailer and you're hauling 2 horses and you don't have that storage in that first stall, I actually, when I first was doing endurance and had a 2-horse tag along, I did my hay in the hay bags, and they went into the living quarters part of my trailer, all stacked in the bathroom. And then when I got there, they came out of the bathroom. But again, your hay takes up probably, that in your containment takes up the most room in your trailer as you're trying to organize. You see here the hay in the actual trash bags. There are actual bags that you can buy that are specifically for hay, that are waterproof.
We have pictures of those later, Diane.
You do? Okay. I thought you did. I thought they were with this, but again, as Terry had said too, planning that space, and things that, like, hay can fall over. If I stand, these are laying flatter. These are laying flat, stacked on top of each other. I stack my hay standing up, but then I tie them to the wall of the trailer with those ties I said that I had installed. My canopies are all lined up against the wall, the furthest away from that escape door. Again, they're tied in to D-ring ties that I had installed into the trailer. So you want to think about how to secure everything so that when you open that divider, everything doesn't fall out on you.
And at the end of a ride, it doesn't matter how careful you plan, this is what it's going to look like.
We just have a comment that one person said they've been using the Amazon moving bags for hay, holding 3 flakes and zip closed cheap and hold so far. And another person says contractor bags are great, easy to get.
Yeah.
Yes, those were contractor bags that the hay was in.
Yep. And so no matter what you do, for all your careful packing at the end of a ride, this is what you're going to end up with. And then you get to go home and clean it all and start over again. Lonnie, do you want to talk to us about what goes in an emergency bag? Because we really should have that for our animals.
Yep. So, and to back up just a little bit, so the reason for this whole discussion, the reason for the benefit of packing well is you want to develop a system so you always put the same stuff in the same place all the time. Because if you don't, you're going to be fighting all the time with whoever you're driving with. We're, you know, not only going to forget something, you know, because if you get to a ride, you basically need your saddle, your bridle, and your hard hat, and everything else you can fake it. I mean, you can borrow a coat to sleep under, you can borrow food from your horse, as long as you, a girth is helpful, but you can even borrow a girth. But if you always put stuff in the same place, then you won't forget it. Then you just sort of go down to your trailer and see what's going on. But if you don't pack well, there's going to be a lot of throwing things and yelling at each other because you thought that somebody put this here and it wasn't put there. So the whole point of this packing discussion is because the quicker you are at finding what you need, the more rest you have and the more rest your horse has. When you're not throwing things because you know emptying the entire first stall because you couldn't find where you put the buckets, is if you always put stuff in the right place, the horse is much calmer and you're much calmer because you know where things are and you're not yelling at each other all the time. And then the other thing we keep talking about is keeping things close at hand, because your emergency bag, along with everything else, is you always want to be able to reach that. When Dave was talking about the trailering, the thing that I want to be able to open my trailer door and actually I keep it inside my my living quarters. I want to be able to reach the tire changing stuff right away, because when change a tire, you're going to be on the side of Interstate 84 or Interstate 66 or something bad, and you don't want to be throwing things and saying, where is it? So as far as I'm concerned, my sleeping bag and my clothes can be buried. They can be way far away. I don't need those. The food, the human food, can be buried way far away. I don't need those to be close by. I need my tire changing stuff, like Diane's saying, when you need to set up when you first get there. But do you the first aid kit, your emergency bag, needs to be somewhere, and ours is hanging on the wall. It doesn't sit on the floor. It's hanging on the wall right at eye level, and it's red, so we can always find it. And it needs to be close at hand. But if you think about what things, I mean, realistically, what happens when you're trailering or when you're driving or when you're ahead or you're away, is the most common thing is they whack their head into something and open their head up. I mean, they're either going to bang their head on the top of the trailer, or they're going to bang their head on the side of the truck, or they're going to do, they're always banging their head on things, or they're going to stick their leg. But truthfully, the most common thing you're going to have is minor lacerations, which do not stop you from competing. You're going to have minor lacerations just because they put when they're loading on the trailer, they step off the edge and they get a scrape. And so depending on what so you want to be close at hand, but truthfully, the things that you're going to see most are either a minor laceration, a major laceration, okay, more big deal, then you got to regroup and do something else. You don't see colic that much, but they might be stressed and uncomfortable and have ulcers. So those are some, you want to sort of have something to make their stomach feel better, because the things you want to have in your emergency bag depends on what you feel comfortable with and what your veterinarian is comfortable giving you. Because things that we always want to have is we want to have, non-steroidals. I mean, for me personally, I always like to have Banamine on hand because it works for making their stomach feel better. It works for making, it gets rid of pain, swelling, inflammation, things like that. Makes their, and so that's, if they bang their eye, it'll help with swelling in their eye. So I always have some sort of, in this picture, there's some bute paste there and some Banamine paste there, but we always have some sort of anti-inflammatory on hand. Obviously, you need some kind of bandaging, because if a horse is breathing, it's going to stick its head or its foot or something somewhere, and it's going to bleed. That is just what they do for a living. And so most you can stop most bleeding by wrapping it up. So what this one has, again, it's got poultice pads, it's got cotton, but when we were kids, we wrapped everything in towels and ace bandages. I mean, you use whatever you have, but it needs to be close at hand. But so usually the things that we have in our trailer is some kind of non-steroidal anti-inflammatory like Banamine, which is more versatile than bute, but it's still good. We usually have bandaging equipment that's close at hand. it's very common for them to have a squinty eye. Is to like the air is blowing around the trailer and they get hay in their eye, or there's a window open, things like that. So we usually keep eye ointments on hand. For us personally, I usually keep tranquilizers on hand. And again, your veterinarian may be willing to dispense you a syringe or two or a bottle of ACE or something, just in case, you have some disaster on the side of the road. You're on the side of I-81 and there's 2 inches between you and the next lane over, and your horse has to stand there for 4 hours while you wait for help. So depending on what you're comfortable using and what your veterinarian is comfortable dispensing, we usually keep tranquilizers on hand, just because I don't want them trying to climb out the people door or something if things are going difficult. We usually keep electrolytes close by and stomach medications, like anti-ulcer medications. So something like Gastrogard or ulcer guard, those are the things we most commonly use for ulcers, but they take a while to kick in. They don't, like, if you think your horse is having an ulcer episode, is giving them a tube of Gastrogard will help, but it'll take 3 days to help. So you may have other things that work for you, whether it's aloe, whether it's Tagamet, whether it's ranitidine or sucralfate, or whatever it is that you keep on hand. If your horse has gotten nervous, is not eating and drinking right, so again, work with your veterinarian and find out what you're going to feel comfortable giving that won't do any harm, in case you're off the mark. But again, so we usually have bandaging things to cut off swelling, things to calm them down, things to make their stomach feel better, and something to put in their eye when you realize that they've got this eye that's squinted shut, it's got a piece of hay stuck in it. But those are the most common things you'll have on your trailer. But again, it doesn't do you any good if it's, and I don't even care so much that it's in date. I mean, a lot of medications are fine, but and of course there's also a stethoscope there and a thermometer. Those are actually the most important thing is for scissors. Is anything you do in your truck and trailer is going to require a pair of scissors, and that will generate a lot of throwing things and screaming, yelling at each other. So you never have too many. I mean, we have scissors hung everywhere. To do this or that, you're going to need a pair of scissors. But again, it's hang it somewhere that is at eye. Then you'll be a lot calmer, and your horses will be a lot calmer.
So we have thank you, Lonnie. That's wonderful information. We have a question. If your trailer is your barn and tack room, do you remove items when you're trailering, or just leave it all in there?
If you've got the space and it works for you, leave it in there. No point hauling it back and forth.
Exactly. It all depends on the amount of space that you have. If you're hitching up to a truck and you're able to put the belongings for the people in the truck and keep the things for the horse in your barn/trailer, then by all means do that. Because there's that whole thing of do what's easiest and makes the most sense. So that would be my answer to that. All right, let's talk home away from home for the people, because we need to be happy and comfortable and safe too. We've got, you'll see in the background of this picture, there's some fencing options. But, we've all done from soup to nuts on how we get ourselves together at a ride. You'll see people roll in the most luxurious trailers that look like they sleep 12 people. And, you think the rock band is rolling in this fancy rig. Not everybody has that, and that's fine. But you do need to figure out, regardless of how you travel, where are you going to sleep? If you're tenting it, if you're doing a living quarters, if you're putting a cot inside your horse trailer, if you are rolling out your sleeping bag and sleeping in the back of your truck, you just need to make sure that you have a place that is warm and dry for you to sleep. In colder weather, make sure you've got, either the fancy sleeping bag for the climate or the layers of blankets. I personally like to use kind of what I call the onion method. I put a bunch of blankets in a pile, And as the night goes on, if I'm too cold, then I, pick a place within that stack. I, will start with maybe 6 blankets, and I'll start underneath 5 of them. And if that's too hot, then I get out and I get underneath 4 of them. And if that's too hot, then I get out and I get underneath 3 of them. And then if it gets cold again, then I can just wiggle myself back underneath and go lower in the pile. It sounds complicated. It's not that complicated. Because if you're hydrating, you get up to pee a lot in the middle of the night. So each time you get in and out, you pick where you want to get back in the blankets. But, other things that you can do to kind of figure out what makes your place in the ride camp home. We have tables that we've collected over the years. We have these cute little rugs. Diane mentioned Mary Coleman. She sells the fun horsey rugs, just to make sure that you're not dragging, wet dirt and mud and whatever into wherever it is that you're going to sleep, whether it's the stall of the trailer or into your bed or whatever. Those rugs are helpful for keeping things out of your space. Different options for how to get this done. The picture on the left is a fun nighttime view of Diane's rig at one of the rides. She's got it all lit up so everybody knows where to find the party. In the middle there, you can see somebody's got a pop-up and they've got the awning on their trailer. So adding sort of that annexed space gives you extra shade. It really is something to consider, getting one of those little pop-ups, even if you don't have the living quarters trailer, just sitting it next to your tag along, so that you do have some shelter, because inevitably it's going to rain or the sun's going to be beating down on you, and just having a little spot for some comfort is nice. This rig on the right belongs to a woman that is no longer with us, but was around for years and entertained all of us. Pat Oliva used to travel in her van that she would sleep in, and had her tag along trailer for all of her horse things. And that's how she got around. So there's many, many ways to get it done. And then there's the tent camping version. I have to tell you, the way on the right is the way that my gang travels. So we have, the multi-room tent that we put, a lot of our food and stuff in, and one of the parents sleeps in there. We have the little tiny tents that we pop the kids into. And the tent on the left is a joke that we have been passing around, that, the glamping version with the lights and the lawn furniture and the fanciness on the inside is how we'd really prefer to do it. But that's one of our pipe dreams. So there's, again, lots of ways to get it done. Just kind of knowing what works for you and how, what you need to be comfortable. All right. Diane, do you want to start us off on food for the horse?
Yes. And again, going on the theme that this is about the packing like a pro, you can go ahead and go right to the next one, I think. As you're trying to prepare for your trip, there is no right way to do this. And as we were actually preparing for this, we realized each of us do it totally different. So I'm going to try to touch on all of those different ways. But the concept is to consolidate. And as you see, the one on the far left is half a bag of grain being brought, and then the supplements are kind of beside it. So that person would just bring the bag, scoop out the measurement, and then add their supplements to it. The next one over is kind of what I do, and that is I take the time at home, and it's very cumbersome, but I make the baggie for every single meal, figure out exactly how many meals I need, add all the supplements to the baggie, so that at camp, all I do is pull the baggie out, dump it in the pan, add the water, it's ready to go, and I don't have to think about it.
And you reuse your bags, right?
Reuse the bag over and over again.
You are being responsible.
And I actually have a bucket, kind of like the ones on the right, that's labeled feed baggies. Also, you see the next one over, and I sort of actually have this in my trailer too, and that is a bucket of every different kind of grain and feed. so that, and they're all labeled, as you can see, so that when you get there, you can just pop the lid and scoop out a little bit of beet pulp, scoop out a little bit of grain, and then add the electrolytes to it. I believe it's Lisa who brings the food to soup out, but she pre-measures all her electrolytes and supplements at home and puts them in little small baggies. But as you're planning for packing, just think about how you can consolidate, put things into smaller containers, again, light containers that can be stacked, as you can see there on the picture on the far right and the second one from the right. If you use light containers, I used to have some rectangular and some round, and it really did not fit in that first stall. But having all rectangular ones, you are using up every little bit of space and not wasting any space. So there's no right way to do the horse feed, but you want to make sure as you're packing for the trip that you've got enough forage. And a lot of forage now, you can bring hay pellets. They take up a lot less room, but when you soak them, they blow up and are a lot of food for the horse. You now have forage that is condensed, very heavy, but it takes up a lot less room than all those bags of hay. So in your packing, you want to think that way, and then think about exactly how much you need, not only to feed the horse morning and night, and what supplements you need to preload before the ride, but then what you need for the vet check. Those buckets that are the second from the right or in the right kind of look like mine, where I have the smorgasbord of food for the vet check. And I'm anal. I actually pre-do gallon baggies for the vet checks. I kind of know my horse and know what he likes to eat. First hold, second hold, third hold. He gets nicer, sweeter stuff as the ride goes on. But then just in case he goes off his normal food, there are those buckets, like you see those 6 stacked there, that is, and people can chime in. I have sweet pea. I've got a handy mash. I have beet pulp. I have hay pellets. Now, hay pellets take a long time. If you have a crew that can soak them before you get in, you don't want to be feeding them to them right as you come in if they just had the water put on them. But I have 6 different buckets, 6 different things. So if he doesn't like the bags I pre-did, I can quickly open up those buckets and, add it to the pan to sweeten up what he's eating. And I do want to point out, if anyone, I just learned about this a year ago. The buckets on the right, if you notice, those are screw caps. You can get them at Home Depot and they will fit are those 20-pound buckets? Is that the size bucket they fit, Terry?
5 gallon.
Those are they're 5 gallon.
Yeah, 5 or 7 gallon.
But you can get them at Home Depot. I don't know where else you can get them, but they snap on, but then the lid screws. And I don't know about anybody else, but as I've gotten older and have arthritic hands, prying those lids that come with those buckets off over and over and over again during a ride, it's really, really hard. But these screw covers really help keep everything dry, especially at a ride. You can scoop it out, screw that cap right back on real quick, and it keeps everything in that bucket dry.
You can actually also get them at Tractor Supply. Tractor Supply's got them.
Yeah.
So
Gamma Seal is probably the most well-known one.
Who?
Gamma Seal is
Seal.
probably the most widely known one.
Right. But again,
And
instead of bringing huge bags of all these different things, consider consolidating them into smaller containers. And as you do more and more rides, you get a good idea of how much you're going to use in a weekend, and having a little extra to give to the friend whose horse won't eat. And that way you can bring a lot more variety in a lot less space.
And my buckets are the rectangular ones that are stacked. Again, I'm the crazy lady that, I covered the label. Those are old supplement buckets. And, we've been doing this long enough that I collected 1 million of them. And I covered the labels so they would all match. And, they have the flip up lid. And then it's an easy, like, lift the lid, take what you need, and close it back up again. So that's just how I roll.
And that's
Then I didn't have to
that's
buy
exactly
buckets.
what mine are, all old supplement buckets that I have my stuff in. I think I have one more slide. Yep. Two more, actually.
You do.
And I sort of already talked about this, the different ways of storing or hauling the hay. The thing on the right is a pre-made hay. It's made specifically for a bale of hay. On the left are those trash bags. Carrie, are those the ones that I sent with Dreamer to you?
They are, and we had to figure out how to get those into the trailer that was already full when we got to that location. So that was not my finest packing job,
Yeah.
but we made it.
But as one of our participants commented, a contractor bag, these are the bigger 55-gallon bags, but the contractor bags fit exactly one bale of hay,
They do.
and they're super thick. And I have some that are probably 3 years old that still are, I'm still using them for my hay. I just save them after each one's empty and bring them back and fill them for the next trip.
Yep.
And then, and I'm sure Terry will chime in on this. When you start thinking about the supplements and the electrolytes, we're not going to talk about what kind of electrolytes, it's how to bring it. I don't know about everybody else, but I buy my electrolytes and I still have 2 more buckets left of Performing Wind, that 20-pound bucket. You don't want to be bringing that to the ride. It's saving containers, all different kinds of containers, to bring those electrolytes with you to save space, but again, having it all labeled and ready to go. And these are all Terry's different kinds of containers she brings her stuff in.
Yeah, so the container on the left, you can clearly see it's from Relish. What works really well about that container is that if I pre-mix my electrolytes, I can put them in that bottle, and that bottle slips into my pack on my saddle. I can get 3 doses of electrolytes in that bottle. So if it's just me, I have that bottle for every loop that I do, and I just, fill my syringe and hit my horse with it, about halfway around the loop, if it's a long loop. Or if I'm, chaperoning kids, that bottle, we work together where, I'm just filling syringes and then they're dosing their horses. And, we can get 3 horses done around one loop. But, it's got that flip lid. And if it dies during a ride, nobody cries because we haven't spent money on it. But those, all of your condiments and even some of your salad dressings have that flip lid. So it's a really nice mixing bottle. Somebody on the right-hand side, I stole this picture off of Facebook. They went and bought fancy color-coded kids' beverage cups, and they pre-mixed their electrolytes in those. I don't know if there was a system to the color coding, but, the picture made me happy to look at it because it looks like they have a very good plan. Again, the key is the plan. The jar in the middle is just a storage jar that I got from Walmart. And again, my thing about this jar that I like so much is that the lid is attached to the jar, because if you're dealing with more than one horse in a vet check, or it gets dark outside, if you're doing 100, it always happens. Somebody takes that lid and they're working and they put the lid right next to them, and then they can't find it. And in the dark, in the wet, in the rush of things, Lonnie's talking about, the best ways to start fights in among your crew is when things get lost. So if that lid never leaves the jar, then we know that we don't have that problem to deal with. We can fight about other things. So those are just some suggestions. Again, obviously there's a million ways to do it, but, just giving you some little tidbits on things that we've come up with. Okay, let's talk about food for the people, Dave.
That's one of my favorite subjects. Food for the people. If you're traveling solo, not that big of a deal to fix some food for yourself. If you know our group, me, Terry, Bob, and we've been accused of showing up with half the state of Maryland, and now I think we've added like a little corner of Virginia to that as well. That slide was like Terry's shopping trip to Costco for a ride at I think it was the beginning of the season, wasn't it?
This was for
Yeah,
Old
it can get out of
Dominion.
hand if you let it. It can get out of hand. But really what it boils down to is, what do you like? What works for you? A lot of people prep their food at home, so all they have to do is heat it up at the ride. That's great. We tend to go a little overboard with grills and God knows what else, and have quite the spread. And we've had people we don't even know come over for dinner. But that's how you get to know them. It works out great. Let's see, cooking and storage. Obviously the flat grill there, which is my new favorite toy. Gas grill. If you've got living quarters, you got the stove and or the microwave in there. Several different ways to cook or heat food. As far as storage goes, a lot of people use the refrigerators in the trailers. We don't, only because number one, you have to basically have the trailer leveled to run it off the propane, which we don't usually take that much time to do. Coolers. We might have 8 or 10 coolers with us because we got a whole horde of people, but a couple coolers and some ice, and you're usually good to go for 2-3 days at least. We've gone as long as 4 or 5 days just with ice. You might have to add to it. Usually there's a little store nearby, but you can get by without it if not. Let's see. Next slide, please.
I just thought this was funny. It just really struck me because
It
there's
is, and it's
yeah. So there you go.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
Most people's version of meal prep, but a horse person's version is very different.
Yep. Stephen Hay posted a great picture back in the winter. It's all bundled up like Nana of the North, and he's got buckets in his arms, and they got a picture of their tub with about 6 buckets all full of mash and whatnot, keeping it nice and warm for the horse's dinner. True horse person.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Definitely. But this is, getting ready for a vet check, and it's all about the preparation, but getting ready for a ride too. If you, have little meals that you like, then by all means, put them in containers and stack them in the cooler. And then you're able to pull out, you can even label them by the day or by the, this is what I want at the finish line. This is what I want to eat breakfast the morning of the ride. Those labels make a big difference in being able to find what it is that you want when you want it. All right, let's talk.
Let me
Yes.
interject real quick about a cooler. A little trick I learned years ago is, instead of buying bags of ice for your food cooler, if you can plan ahead, freeze gallon jugs of water or your actual drinking water. And if they're completely solid, they will last for days, much better than bags of ice. Your food doesn't get soggy, and it's a 2-use system. As it thaws, you have water to drink. The same thing with your electrolyte, your electrolytes, whether it's Gatorade or you add the powder to the electrolytes. Freeze all of that ahead of time in your good freezer at home, and then put it all in the cooler. And again, your food doesn't get soggy, and the gallons of ice, the gallon bottles of ice last way longer than a bag of ice.
Brilliant. All right, let's talk wardrobe for the horse. So there's always that conversation about, do you blanket? Do you not blanket? As a general rule, just for some perspective on where I come from on this, I'm not a blanketer. Our horses don't usually see blankets unless it is like below freezing and wet. So just that's my normal standpoint on blankets. Life in camp is different than life at home. So when you think about at home how your horses get to move around and they are able to keep themselves warm by moving versus being in whatever containment system you've chosen, which is usually not much bigger than a stall, they don't get the opportunity to move. So I am much more likely to apply some sort of protection in a camp more so than what I would do at home. That said, when you are working your horse and it's a cool morning, which very often we see, fleece coolers to help keep those large muscle groups warm are really important. Rain sheets and waterproof things work for everything from keeping your horse dry before you go to put a saddle on it to actually keeping your saddle dry during a vet check. I'm not a rump rug user, but a lot of people are. So that's another way to keep that hind quarter warm on a cool morning. Fly sheets and fly masks are oftentimes a lifesaver in a camp that happens to be very buggy. So those are things not necessarily to run out and buy, but if you own them, consider bringing them. And how do we bring them, you ask? That's an awfully big list. Shrinking them into vacuum bags. This is like my new favorite thing. So last year for the national championship, we did the 100. And as I got to thinking about what the weather forecast looked like, we were going to have rain. It was going to be cool, which who knew? Like, it's June, for goodness sakes. Why is it going to be cool? Because we were doing a ride. That's why. So it was really important to me to make sure that not only we had enough things to keep all those muscle groups warm, but if things were getting wet, what were we going to do when that one thing that we used was wet? We couldn't use it again. So we needed replacements. So I started researching, how am I going to get these blankets stored? And this little system in the middle, found it on Amazon. It was super cheap. It came with the little bicycle pump thing. And we got our Rubbermaid tub that would fit exactly in the back of the trailer next to our water tank. And I got 15 blankets in that tub by shrinking them. That little pump took all the air out of the bags, and we stood the blankets up on end so that when we took the lid off of that tub, we were looking at the blankets as a filing system. So we did not stack them the way you see the bags in the picture where they're one on top of each other, because then the item that's on the bottom is the one that you want. You can't see it. So by stacking them vertically, and believe me, they were stiff enough that we could do it. By stacking them vertically, we could file through them and get exactly what we wanted. That box weighed 1.5 million pounds, but once it got in the trailer, we didn't have to move it again. And we were warm and dry for the entire 100-mile ride. So that is my pitch for vacuum bags. And that's how I will store my blankets forever and ever. Another option, if you're not, that crazy that you want to vacuum everything, blanket bags, either the ones that the blankets come in when you buy them or when you buy comforters. That's another really good option. But again, do you see how the whole point is that we are taking that blanket and we are putting it into a space that it now has square edges that can be stacked and utilized. So instead of wadding that blanket up into a ball and having straps and things hanging that get caught on stuff, we're putting the blankets into some kind of a space that we can now stack and put in with other belongings. Okay, Lisa, do you want to talk to us about wardrobe for the people?
Sure. So, first of all, we have a comment in the chat.
Mhm.
Speaking of heavy boxes, I got a foldable wheel cart to be able to move a cooler or a blanket box easily. So that's always excellent. And I think we'll be talking about those later.
Oh,
So-
yes. Carts are on our list.
Yes. So for wardrobe, one of the things we recommend is that you do layers. You always want to have layers. You want to be able to go from the heaviest, like what you see in this picture, down to, that's how it could start in the morning. It might be, 25 degrees when you start in the morning, but it could be 70 degrees when you end. So you want to be able to have layers that you can take off easily, and you want light layers. That there's a lot of options for layers now. Certainly, there's a ton of lightweight, breathable layers that you can have. You want to have something that if it gets wet, it's not going to make you cold. That's really important. Also, as you're riding, you're going to sweat. And so again, you're going to get cold if you have a cool breeze or something like that. So you want to have something that's not going to get wet as you're riding. You want to be able to have something that's going to breathe and it's going to dry quickly. The other thing is we always recommend bringing some kind of rain gear, whether that's something that you have at the hold or it's something you carry in a pack. It's really important that you have some rain gear, even if they're not calling for rain. It's really important to have. The other thing is you want to have some kind of muck boots or something like that, because even if they're not calling for rain, it's possible that you're going to have dew in the morning. So when you're out working with your horse, you're going to walk them, you're going to be mucking out the pen. You want to have something that's not going to get wet, so your socks don't get wet, so your feet don't get wet. And talking about socks, something that I learned from Terry, and I use this all the time, is bring some extra socks. It's really, really helpful at a hold. Put on some nice clean socks. So as a
outlook on life.
yes. So, packing tips, again, there's the controversy about rolling versus folding, as to what you can pack into these things. As you see at the top picture, there's these containment systems that you can get that will pack for, say, if you have day 1, day 2, you can have your clothes in these different systems. These are great packing cubes. I actually hate to say it, my mother-in-law got some of these in the mail from AARP, and I used them recently on a trip, and they were fantastic to use. So it is something that's really helpful to have these packing cubes. And again, you want to pack for the different times of day and what you're going to encounter. So in the morning, it's normally cooler. It may be damp, especially on the East Coast. And then during the afternoon, it's going to be warm, and you're going to want to have a lighter weight top, perhaps a lighter weight, even riding pants. You can change your riding pants. And then in the evening, as it gets cooler, you absolutely need to make sure that you have something to cover yourself, so that you don't get cold and you don't start getting into any kind of hyperthermia. So that's really important. And then for your crew, you really want to make sure that your crew have appropriate clothing so that they're happy and they're comfortable while they're waiting for you to come into a ride. And we have in the chat a link to Amazon, the aluminum folding capacity, which is absolutely wonderful. So I think that's
awesome. When I'm doing my packing cubes, I usually try to put things that go for each purpose. So like my ride day outfits are in one cube. So that, the day before the ride, I'm not even touching that cube. That is set aside. That is ride day. Then I have one that is post ride, because I don't know if anybody else has experienced this, but after the ride, I have certain specific ultra comfy things that are, you know, just the right weight and just the right bagginess that make me happy. So my post-ride clothes are in another bag, so they don't get confused with anything else. I have PJs all in one little cube. So it's, you know, by how I'm going to use it is how it's organized. And I usually, my recommendation for packing is that you pack as though you're going on a trip around the world, so that you have everything from your bikini to your parka and all the stuff in between. And then you are never caught off guard.
I agree, Terry. I think that's one of the key things that's made my life a lot easier is you have a specific thing that you ride in. You have specific shoes, specific socks, whatever it is, a shirt, whatever.
Got your lucky socks.
Yeah, and you don't want to be digging for it. And we usually getting dressed about 5:30 in the morning, so it's dark and somebody's in the light, and you can't remember where you put things. So you don't want all your clothes in one bag, because then you're pawing through it and you can't find it, even though it's smack in front of you. So I just have a separate tote that is just like you say. It's when I say, okay, I've fed the horses, I've electrolyted the horses, where breakfast has started. Now I'm going to go get changed. I just pick this bag up and I go, and whatever's in that bag needs to be on my body, so I don't forget anything. Yep. And that is so much better than trying to dig around through all your warm clothes and your cold clothes and your long pants and your short pants. Is you have everything just in a totally separate bag.
Yep.
Absolutely. Yep. That really makes it very simple for you.
Yep. And then, you know, just, you know, because it is no fashion show. So, you know, when desperate times happen, you will wear the horse blanket. And, you know, we've all been digging in a trailer when the rain starts coming down, and you will put on whatever waterproof things or warm clothes are available. This was my crew at National Championship last year, and a couple of them came packed like it was June and did not plan for the weather that we actually got. So they went foraging in the trailer and ended up wearing whatever random clothing was in the closet of the trailer. So there you go. Thank goodness we don't get points for fashion. All right. Lonnie, this is you. You're talking about sporting equipment for our horse.
So going straight off what we just talked about with the horses is, if you're going to do a ride, you're going to do a 50-mile ride tomorrow or a 35-mile ride or whatever it is you're going to do, you probably have specific gear. You don't just grab any breastplate and put it on if you're going to go do a ride. You don't just grab any girth. You probably have, just like you do for yourself, a set aside series of clothing for your horse. You know, saddle pads are sort of interchangeable. I mean, you look at them and you know if you want them or not. But if you like in this one, this would drive me crazy, this picture on the far left, because all the girths are neatly hung up, but my horse's girth is specific. I don't know which one that is. And you're either going to, when it goes to girth them up, you're going to grab 5 different girths and try to figure out which girth it is. So what we do is we have
Lonnie, that's actually organized. Those are all 24-inch girths. The ones over behind the saddle girths, those are the girths that go on the horse for the start of the ride. Those black ones. There is a system there.
Yeah, and it looks very.
Of course, there's a system.
Right. It looks great because what we have is a similar system to this, because you either have one horse or 2 or 3 or 4 horses. Is that Fuji wears a certain size clothing. Fuji is a 15 two-hand Arabian with a standard size face, and his girth is this big, et cetera, et cetera. So he has his breastplate and his boots and his bridle and his girth and his breeching all hung on one hook, and his name is above it. And then the next horse over is Dino, and he wears a different bit and different boots, and he wears a what do you call it, the fly thing on his ear so he doesn't get fussy, things like that. And so his is there, and so every horse has their own rack. So when I go to dress the horse, I scoop up everything off that one hook, just like I would be as if I'm going to dress myself. Is I say I'm going to go get Dino's clothes, and even if Fuji doesn't come to the ride, his clothes are still on his rack. And so say Honey breaks her bridle. Well, Honey is a very similar size to Dino, or rather to Fuji. So I don't have to say, because if you have a tack hook and you have 6 bridles hanging on it, and you know your bridle's red, but you can't remember if you have the snaffle on there or the Kimberwick on there or what's going on. So if you're the only one there, that's fine. If there's 4 horses going and you have a bunch of crew people, it's much easier to say, go get Fuji's tack and we'll switch him over to Honey's, that kind of thing, because you know what size the horse is and his girth will match hers. Because it's again, how many times are you at a ride and there's 3 or 4 people tacking up and you're switching girths back and forth because this one's off by 2 inches from the one you actually need, and then take it off and start all over again, which means you have to feed the breastplate through it, et cetera, et cetera. So we usually tend to just, again, keep each horse's labeled and separate, and then that way you know to go to it if you need to change anything, if you need to, you know which horse to tap from if you need to change something. And because again, of course you need spares of everything, but that's what works for us, is not just having all the bridles hanging in one area, having all the breastplates hanging in one area, but having each horse's specific. So there's nobody stealing anybody else's tack. Who's got my breastplate? That kind of thing. What's the next slide?
Leg protection.
Okay, so leg protection, and then this is also slightly different, is one of the things Terry talked about, is if you do different disciplines. So if you do fox hunting, then you're going to have a completely different set of tack, because it better be leather and it better be black or brown. It's not going to be, your boots are not going to be pink, et cetera, et cetera. So what we do again with leg protection is some horses, they just wear them, and other horses cannot go without them. And every horse needs a different kind of boot so it doesn't rub. Some horses need the hard shell of the boot, so if they tend to whack hard, they don't hit themselves. So what we do is, when we hang our tack up on their special little labeled hook, is that we wrap the boots around the breastplate. So if I'm riding and I come into a vet check and I take the boots off, because of course you have to go through the vet check, then I promptly I always put them on my stirrups, on my stirrup leathers. So then that way they're on the correct side of the horse. If I take off the left boots, I hang them on the left stirrup leather. So you're not rummaging around in camp trying to find, where did I put these? I've got to tack them back up. I'm leaving 3 minutes and I don't know where my boots are. If anything's going to get lost in the wheelbarrow or get lost in the trailer, it's going to be your boots, and you're only going to have one. So when I get off the horse, I always put them on my stirrup leathers. But what we do is, when we hang them up in the trailer, we put them on, rather than just having, again, all the boots hanging in one place, because then you don't, unless you're familiar with this specific horse, we just put them on the breastplate of their labeled hook. So then we know exactly who's got what.
Good way to do it.
And then one of the things that, and you may think you're never going to ride at night, but rather than so in each one of our trailers, because we've got 3 or 4 different trailers, depending on how many horses we're taking, how far we're going, and we have a tote bag that is specifically full of the stuff you need to ride at night, because otherwise you're not going to be able to find it, and it's not going to work, and you're going to be cranky, and you're going to be in the dark without being well prepared. So you always need, because hopefully you've got a headlamp with you, even when you're driving, you've got it in your backpack or whatever it is, and it's got fresh batteries, because if something happens and you're driving down the road and you need to jump out of your truck, you just grab your headlamp and go. But and since I've got a new horse and we've recently started doing 50s, my headlamp is always on my helmet, because when I go out in the morning, when I leave camp in the morning, I may not be back before dark, because when we were riding, we rode South Mountain, and it got dark around 5 o'clock, and we didn't finish till 7:10. Well, I don't want to be looking for my headlamp and trying to figure out how to get it on my hard hat. So it just lives on my hard hat. But the things you need to have, so you need to have a bag, and ours happens to be black because it's for night. It's our night bag. It's got the headlamps in it, but how are you going to get your headlamp on your hard hat? So we always carry zip ties. Some people duct tape them, whatever, zip tie them through the holes in your hard hat. So you have to have zip ties there. You have to have scissors there, because at some point you're going to need scissors. You're going to want glow sticks to put on your horse's breastplate or wherever you hang them on your horse. Again, how are you going to do that? So you better have zip ties in. At night, you have to have reflective equipment on your horse, whether it's reflective leg wraps or reflective danglers or however you do it. So sort of highway lime green vests with fluorescent on them, in this bag. So everything's together in the bag, and every trailer has a bag. So Dawn Hilliard and I went to a ride in Florida, and we got there at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and it was 95 degrees, and we were going to ride the next day. And it turns out they have a night ride. They have a ride that starts at like 7 at night and goes till midnight. And so this was not a problem, because otherwise we would have been scrambling saying, can we accumulate? The ride is going to start in 2 hours. Can we accumulate everything we need to ride at night? No, we just grabbed the night bag, and it's got a variety of headlamps. It's got everything you need in it ready to go. So you're not digging around. And headlamps have gotten a lot better because of the whole LED thing. It used to be that they had a big battery. They used to have a battery pack, and this is before most of you guys were born. But it would have a big battery pack that you put on your belt, and it had this like wires and things like that, and it made your head ride crooked, and it made your hard hat ride crooked. And there are so many, because the thing about headlamps is it depends on where you are. You either ride with lights or you don't. And those of us who like to ride without lights are terribly irritated by people who can't see in the dark, because every time they turn to look at you, you're blinded and your horse is blinded. But there are so many. I mean, again, they all are our favorite Amazon, but you can go on and get lightweight LED lamps that do a super job. The other thing that's not on this list is that if I'm intentionally riding at night, if I'm going to do the Old Dominion 100, then not only do I carry with me, I mean, I've got my headlamp, but I also carry a hand flashlight with me, a small one, and I always keep it in my pack, because if you want to read your map, you can keep a glow stick handy, so you can just pull your glow stick out and not blind everybody and read your map. But you're going to come to an intersection, and either your headlamps will have gone out, or for some reason you need to see something. You either need to read your map, you need to read your rider card, you need to do something. So we always carry separate small hand flashlights with us in the pack of the horse. But so that has made our life a lot easier. It's every trailer just has a night bag, so you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to think, did we get the zip ties? Did we do this? Did we do that?
Awesome. This next picture is that just to show that your crew gets giddy when you're out late riding at night. And so the glow sticks in your night bag is entertainment in addition to practical uses.
I think that was Big 92.
That I believe that was Laurel Run when they were waiting for the 100-milers to come through on their way back. They were getting very silly. All right. Lonnie, you want to address storage and whatnot of post-ride care?
Yeah. And I think everybody, again, there's no one right thing for this. Because I think that if the weather cooperates, if it's, of course, if the weather is the absolute perfect temperature, the most important thing you can do for your horse, and it has to be 65 degrees and higher, is to actually give it a thorough wash when you're done riding it. And all that takes is water, because then you have to touch your hands on every piece of them, and then you find that their pole is sore, or you find that where their breastplate goes along the front of their shoulder is sore, or you find a little bit of heat or swelling somewhere. So because if you get off your horse at the end of a ride, they are one sticky, grumpy, sweat-stained individual, and it's in their armpits,
Kind of
and
like
it's on their sides and everything.
At the end of a ride?
Yeah, absolutely. And we're much stinkier. Because again, the first thing they do is when you turn them out at home is they throw themselves on, but they're not going to get the girth. They're not going to get the areas that you're going to need very soon. So it really works as if it's not too cold, which it is right now, but if it's not too cold, to really give them, and I'm not talking a medicated bath. I'm just talking run water all over them and get up underneath their hind legs and in between their front legs, because you're going to turn them out and let them be, and then catch them in another week and say, well, we got to get going again. And then you find you get this ferocious scurf where the girth was, and now they've got rain rot and you've got bald patches, and you really blew it. So what I like to do more than anything else is to really give them a total water wash down, just so you can see all the different parts of their skin and make sure everything's clean. A lot of people like to use poultice. I don't, because I'm lazy. I'm too lazy to put it on and too lazy to take it off, but it does a super job, because the idea is that you've got inflammation in the legs from all that pounding, whether it's hard surface or whether it's mud or whatever it is. So it does work. I don't personally use poultice, so I think it comes in a tub, and I think it's a really good idea. I'm just very lazy. Do you poultice, Terry?
I do, but I don't do all the fancy wrapping. So one of the things that I do is I have what I call a post-ride box, because oftentimes the poultices and things will have arnica in them, which is banned. So that box is set aside, and it's like you do not touch it until after the ride. We will just put that mud on their legs. And if you put your hands in it, I do recommend rubber gloves. It makes it a lot easier to get it so you don't have it up under your fingernails for a week. But we put that mud on, and it feels cool and nice on your hands when you're putting it on. So it must feel good on their legs. But then I just leave it and let it, get crusty and fall off with all the rest of the dirt. And kind of my rule is by the time that poultice is gone, it's time to get back up on them again.
Also at the ARC convention, one of the presenters, you showed it in the first aid bag, Lonnie, and that is that poultice.
Animal. Yeah.
Yes. And they were commenting, and it was a vet, that if you use that, it does the same thing as the poultice, but when you're done, it comes right off, and you don't have all that stuff caked on there, and you're trying to flake it off. And the vet was referencing it because then if something is wrong with the horse and the vet has to see it, they're not trying to wash off all that poultice. You just take that wrap off, but it's done the exact same thing that the poultice would have done.
That sounds good. See, you learn something every day.
Awesome.
Cool. All right. Diane, you want to talk about sporting equipment for the people?
Yes, I would love to. And this list is a really important list. If any of you have ever gotten to not had your helmet in the trailer, if you've got I now have a helmet in each trailer because it has happened to me. You want to have a checklist to make sure that all those things you need for the ride you have with you, whether it's in its own container, whether it's hanging. If you wear extra stuff as far as a half chap or full boots that come up to your knees, gloves, and in us getting ready for the presentation, I learned this new trick, and that is to take your gloves. Most of them have a little Velcro strap now around the wrist, and Velcro them to your helmet strap so you've got your gloves there when you're getting ready to get on, and they're not laying somewhere and you lost them. And when you come into the vet check, is you slide your gloves off to get ready to start sponging the horse down, strap them to the helmet so you know where they are when you get ready to go back out. Whatever riding boots you're going to wear, I personally have, depending on the weather, I have 2 different kinds of riding boots that I have in the trailer. So whatever is your comfortable shoes, whether it's riding boots, tennis shoes, making sure you've got them with you. The GPS watch, your charger for the GPS watch, if you use one. I don't use one. Sunglasses. Lonnie already talked about the headlamp, but always lots of extra batteries. Always put new batteries in it at the start of the weekend, but still have extra batteries in case you've used it a lot and the batteries start to go dead. Most important is that anti-chafing, whether it's body glide or monkey butt or whatever it is you want to use as far as that goes. And again, this is in that realm of packing, whether you do your own bag that has all this stuff in it, whether you have a specific place it always hangs. As Lonnie said, and I'm kind of the same way, everything has its place and it's always in the same place. I'm not digging, trying to find it. And the glow sticks, I use the glow sticks on the horse when they're in their containment so you can look at your trailer and make sure in when you hear commotion going on, along with using them for night riding.
All right.
Oh, let me the headlamp, somebody was asking, I noticed it came up in the chat about where can you find the lightweight ones. There's actually one, you can get it on Amazon, but you can also get them at Costco that have the green light or the red light. Which is not as blinding. You actually don't get that vertigo feeling or the motion sickness like you do with the white light. And it's a lot softer on other people if you turn to say something to somebody and it's on, and it's very lightweight.
Diane, were you talking about saddlebags?
No, that's you.
You are.
It's me. Oh, hi. Okay.
It just happens to be my saddlebag.
It happens to be your saddlebag. Maybe that's why I thought so. All right. So saddlebags are that thing kind of like people who carry a purse. You'll see some people who can get everything they need into a tiny little clutch bag, and some people just carry sort of a suitcase with them everywhere they go. There's no right or wrong answer. It sort of depends on how much creature comfort you want with you on the road, and how long the loops are that you're doing. The Old Dominion rides, I think the longest loop on the 100 is 20 some miles. And when you do that loop, you haven't seen your crew since 2 loops ago. So having some extra things with you becomes important. So choosing your saddlebags, there are a number of companies. I don't want to endorse any particular company. We usually have somebody that comes to the No Frills ride who has bags that a lot of us like. So if you guys come to that event, please check her out. But the things that you put in there, oh my goodness, I left. Do you all see what I did? Diane's pictures. That was my note to put the pictures of Diane's packs on here. So no, you don't need Diane's pictures in your pack, but you do need a small bag of any prescription things that you might need if you have allergies, EpiPen, Benadryl. I usually have one tiny little bag that has just a couple of the pill packs of Benadryl, because you never know what you'll encounter. I usually carry a couple of things of Pepto, because sometimes, you know, in the heat of the day, after taking a bunch of electrolytes, you may end up with an upset stomach. Tums for the same reason. If you are prone to intestinal issues, some Imodium that'll just kind of gum things up right away. Having some sort of a pain reliever with you, and not having those pills, I've learned the hard way, loose in a like in an aspirin bottle, because they get pulverized after a few miles of trotting from here to there. You end up with a powder of everything all mixed together. So that's where those little pill packets that you push through the back are very, very helpful. And usually at the beginning of the season, I just put a random bag of those things in my pack, just a small assortment. And usually, knock on wood, by the end of the season, I take that same bag out and end up disposing of it. But it's there in case we need it. Pliers for shoe removal. That's one that Lonnie feels really strongly about. I have to say, I will admit that I don't have that on my saddle, but her reasoning is really good. And that is that if you get a shoe that's sprung, you need to be able to get it off. Now, we recently were out and encountered a situation where we had a rather large rock the size of my fist got stuck in the horse's shoe. And we came upon some bicyclers, and they had a bicycle chain wrench that went right under that shoe and right under the rock and just popped it right out. And that little tool took up very little space. So that's on my shopping list. Oh my gosh, how did this, I'm so sorry. This ended up being not the slide you were supposed to see. This is all my notes on it. AERC, since it's on here, does have a packing list that you can go on, and it has all sorts of ideas and suggestions. Water is something that you absolutely, even for a short loop, want to have with you. I usually have 1 bottle of water and 1 bottle of electrolytes. On longer loops, I will usually carry 2 bottles of water, because I can either drink one and spray one on my horse if I need to. Snacks, I'm all about snacks. I'm about snacks for me. I'm about snacks for my horse. I sort of nibble my way through a ride because eating in large quantities doesn't really go over well. And, you know, when you're out on long loops, your horses are hungry. So I train them pretty much whenever they hear a zipper, they all stop and turn their heads. So between filling my pockets on my pants or in my jacket and filling at least one pocket of a saddle pack with snacks for the horses, they've always got something to eat. So I carry for them peanuts, baby carrots, cut up apples, and cut up sweet potatoes. So depending on the loop, I'll carry a different selection and assortment. And then I usually always have a granola bar with me that I can eat myself and share. And a multi-tool is always a good one. Zip ties are always good. Baling twine, or, you know, a long piece of paracord. And then, you know, again, that multi-tool so you can cut if you have string with you. Velcro straps is another one of our absolute favorite things. You can get them on Amazon. I like them better than zip ties because they are removable. Once I put a zip tie on, it's there forever and ever. And if I misplace it, like if I don't put it in the right spot and I need to get it off, then I need to get the multi-tool out, or, you know, get the knife or whatever. Whereas the Velcro straps, I can strap it on, and if it's not right, then I can adjust it 25 times until I get it the way I want it. Then let's talk about boots. There are many, many ways to carry a boot. I'm not a boot user as in on all four. I'm a shoe person, but I carry a boot. I think Lonnie is a proponent of carrying two, because same reason she carries two spare tires, because if one's going to go wrong, so is another one. So I always carry that one boot. Now, several companies make packs for boots. I happened to discover a few years ago that this cheap fanny pack, I think it cost me $5 from Walmart, fits perfectly this Easy Boot glove. And I think the biggest one I have is a 2.5 wide. Most of my horses have smaller feet than that, but that 2.5 wide fits in that fanny pack. And then I strap the fanny pack to the back of my saddle. So I have a pommel bag, and then I have this fanny pack on the back. What I do with that boot is I put the things that I plan to use the least. And so far, knock on wood, that has served me well. So inside the boot, this is where the packing gets, where you're utilizing all of your space. So the picture on the bottom, you will see everything that came out of the boot. So I have in that pack, I use a maxi pad that I roll up and put inside the tube of vet wrap. So that pad will help with, if we have any bleeding, whether it's on me or on the horse, we can use that to absorb. And then the vet wrap gets used, you know, to hold it in place or to tie things together or whatever we might need it for. Then duct tape actually comes in these tiny little rolls that you can use for any number of purposes, but the little bitty rolls fit really nicely inside that boot. And then I have a foldable hoof pick. I also have a hoof pick that I got as a completion award at a ride that was made from a horseshoe. And that one also fits inside the boot. So then I put all of those things into the boot, and the boot gets folded up, and then it goes into that fanny pack. And those things are crusty and disgusting looking because I made it through a ride season without having to use them. So just, you know, if you haven't checked your packs lately, you might want to kind of look at what's going on in there, because if you leave things in there from one ride to the next, stuff gets really funky. I learned the hard way that baby carrots turn into something that looks like a raisin if you don't take them out after each ride. Okay, Lonnie, you want to talk to us about crew area essentials?
Yeah, and backing up a little bit, this is just our philosophy about packing, because if you ride, so were able to ride a bunch down in Florida, and Jeremy Reynolds is a very, very exquisitely competent and super guy down there, and he goes very fast all the time. So when you see him, he has a saddle, and he has a girth, and he pad, and that is it. He goes fast enough that he doesn't carry water, he doesn't carry a boot, he doesn't carry any packs on his saddle, because if that happens, his day is over, because he's either going to win or stop. And so this is our mentality is, if anything happens, we will be able to deal with it. If you break any, I mean, I have broken a stirrup before, like you've got a stirrup, which is essentially a circle, and I've broken a stirrup in half and out in the middle of a ride, and you rummage around in your pack and you've got enough stuff to patch it back up so you can ride the rest of the ride if you so feel like it, because you've got enough to keep going. And so this is just our philosophy, is that lack of preparedness will not keep us from finishing this ride. We are going to be prepared no matter what. If you lose any piece of tack, or your friend loses any piece of tack, we are going to keep going. But not everybody does this. Other people are like, I mean, the fast moving people don't weigh themselves down with all this stuff. They just figure if something goes wrong, they stop. Tomorrow is another day. Yep. And we're kind of like, yeah, no, today is today. I'm going to finish if I have to walk the entire way.
Yes, true story.
So that's just us. So with crew area essentials, actually, can we go? I think if we go to the next picture.
Well, my point with this particular picture was that we were at a ride, and someone that was doing the Fort Valley ride arrived with a pile of things that looked exactly like this. She had food for the horse, a stethoscope, a bucket, and electrolytes, and that was all she needed to get through. Yeah. So that was my point in this particular picture, compared to.
Right, exactly. So that is totally true. Is what we're doing is, we've all been doing this for enough years that we like to have our stuff, and it will take you a long time, but you can absolutely finish. A stethoscope is not 100% essential, but it will make your life a whole lot. If you don't know how to take a pulse, this is what my other great big bugaboo. Anybody can show you how to take a pulse with a stethoscope in about 15 seconds, and you will have a skill that will last you forever and ever and ever, and greatly benefit you and your horse. But so you essentially need electrolytes, something for your horse to eat. You really can get by with very little. But the idea with these crew bags here is that we all have very specific things that stay in very specific pockets all the time. And whether, because there's always electrolytes, there's always a step like that. And a lot of these things have a space for hay. A lot of these things have a large to put in hay. But of course, you can't just take one kind of, to have the compressed alfalfa on one section, and you have to have your grass hay in another section, because he only wants to eat grass hay today. And so you will find these crew bags that because you don't need a crew bag. You can use lots of garbage bags, except they all look exactly the same, and you spend a lot of time opening them up and looking at what's in them. But the idea is that if you have a crew bag, you want to keep, so you want to keep your roll of duct tape, and you want to keep your extra string, and you want to keep your extra tack, and you definitely want to have an extra stirrup leather. You are going to need an extra stirrup leather at some point during your career. So the idea of a crew bag is that, sort of like your trailer, everything stays packed always the same. So you have everything you need together.
That particular crew bag is actually Janice's bag, and one side of it's got a flake of hay, the other side has a rain sheet, and then she's got gallon baggies for each time for each vet check. All I got to do is dump it into a feed pan and make it wet. There's a spare shoes, a roll of duct tape, roll of vet wrap. In the bottom, there's a sweat scraper and an electric stethoscope. The bump up against the ribs kind, it works for me just to get him in and get him out. But that's what I bring to the vet check.
Beautiful. Keeps it all contained.
So the idea is, there's a couple of things here. Is in the top photo is, or when you're crewing, when your horse comes into the vet check, the first and most important thing for that horse in that mind is water. It wants to get to the water, and it doesn't want to have to walk through a bunch of things. So we always set the water towards the outside so they can drink without fighting with each other. When they come in off the trail, they want to go straight to the water and they want to drink till they can't possibly hold anymore. And so one of the things we do is on the top picture, you'll see we have large brown trash cans that we got from Walmart. And that's because we don't have any friends. Is we've alienated everybody we know. But so when we're setting up for a crew, whether it's at home, whether it's at base camp or whether it's out on the trail, is we not only do we have 5-gallon buckets, but we take it, and again, we tend to ride bigger horses who drink a lot, and they drink a lot. But if you fill your large trash cans at the beginning, you don't have to fill them again. Like for instance, at Bird Haven, is when you're at the Old Dominion, and Bird Haven is a 16-mile vet check. And if you're lucky enough, if you're doing the 50, you go do this ridiculous loop, and then you come back and you're got 600, you are going to come back to this check. And that happens in most endurance rides now, is you'll use a check every time, is you'll keep coming back to the same check. And it's tiring to bring your horse in off the trail, let them drink, untack them, take them to the vet, and then you think, oh man, before I come back in, I've got to refill my water. So that's why we use these big tubs, is that we don't have to refill any water. I don't have to find a hose from anybody, or I don't have to lug buckets anywhere. Is we just, that way the horses have unencumbered drinking all they want, anything they want to do. The other thing we have in these 5-gallon buckets is we have one specific bucket that is labeled finish line. It just happens to say finish line. It could say vet check, except vet check's too ephemeral, but it has it could have a screw top on it, just like Diane was talking about. But in it, it has the things that when your horse comes in, that it needs to pass a vet check. So it has a stethoscope. It actually has 2 stethoscopes, because you want, if one, you loan one to somebody, you need a stethoscope. You want to be fast. Like Bob was talking about, the heart rate monitor, the handheld heart rate monitors are all well and good, but they're not fast. Is that they take a heart rate and then they think about it for a while, and then they maybe give you a number, and then if it doesn't work, then they give you another number. A stethoscope, within 2 seconds, you can tell if your horse is down and you're gone. So in that bucket that says finish line on it, it has a stethoscope, it has the syringes that you can mix your electrolytes in. It has electrolytes. We use, because we're lazy, we use the pre-filled paste syringes. It's got calcium in it, bottles of calcium in it, and potassium. Because a lot of times, if your heart rate's not potassium, if they're not eating as well as they should be, if you're having low muscles issue, nothing else special in there. But if I bring him in and I want to get him down and I want to get him to the vet check, and that bucket has been traveling with us for 20 years now. It's the same thing, and the stethoscope's all rusted, but it keeps working. But nothing else gets in there. I mean, that's if you're going to pick. So you say, okay, you've only got 1 vet check left. I'm going to pick up everything and put it back in the truck. What do you need? And I say, I need 1 bucket of water, and I need my finish line bucket. That's what I need. But so again, I mean, the obvious things that you're going to have in your crew area is, but it's not so. It's, you need to be comfortable, happy, and content. So he needs to have unlimited water at all times. He needs to have, many different kinds of food. If he wants, as she says, we start out with using this kind of food, but then later on he's going to want a sweeter food and more food. And we're lucky enough that we live near the Charlestown racetrack, and Purina makes this amazing feed called Race Ready, which is basically molasses with a few grains sprinkled into it, and they'll eat that no matter what. So we always have standard sweet feed, but then we have Race Ready, then we have the mashes and things like that. And for humans, of course, you're going to. So one of the things you worry about is when you're setting up your check, is assume it's going to rain. We live in the mid-Atlantic states, and if it doesn't rain, it will rain. So the main thing is just keeping what you need. So we put all of our horse blankets in the hay bag, because we want the hay to stay dry, just so it doesn't happen to get moldy during the day. It's hot and humid where we are, and anything that gets wet is going to get moldy, and then the horses won't want to eat it. So we just combine things. We put all our horse blankets or our raincoats and things like that in the bag with the hay, because then we know they'll stay dry We keep our food actually in the cooler because you don't want your crackers getting wet, but we keep them in the cooler so when it rains, that doesn't that they're set up on top. So so as Terry said, everything is sort of combined. Every single possible item of space is used up. It just depends on what you stack where as far as whether it's going to get wet or not.
Exactly. Now, these crew areas, just to point out, are for more than one horse. You can even see, you know, where Lonnie's sitting. She's got 2 horses there. So as you're looking at these, you know, 85 buckets in one area, these were set up for multiple horses. Do not think that if it's you and your one animal that you have to have every bucket in America in your crew area. But multiple buckets are always beneficial. This is a concept, this rider box concept, is something I started doing a while ago. This happens to be my leftover one from the national championship. It helps to keep rider things separate from horse things. And whether you're, you know, if you're crewing for yourself, you know where everything is because you put it there. But if you start involving you and another rider and some helpers, it's really nice to have this separate box. And, you know, the longer you're out on trail, the bigger the box because the more stuff goes in it. But, you know, your crew can just put a little box with your name on it next to a chair, and they can tell you, go to your corner and leave us alone, because your crew has been waiting all day for their shining moment. You know, the crewing is a lot of hurry up and wait. So they sit there and they sit there and they wait for you. And then you come in and you're there for 45 minutes and they want to do their job. They don't want you hawking over them and getting in their way. So this helps you. They put you in a corner, you sit in a chair, you open the box. It's got whatever snacks you want. It's got your anti-chafing stuff. It's got your dry socks. It's got whatever little creature comforts you want to get yourself together so that you are fresh and ready to go back out when your hold time is over. And it keeps you out of the crew's hair and they can focus on the horse. I will fully own my crazy, but the longer the ride I'm doing, I will actually put in that crew box separate containers. I happen to use gallon Ziploc bags of things that I want to make sure that I do or take care of in that hold. Because as you start to get tired, you start to forget that you need to refill your water bottle. I've done it, and this is why I have this method. You get back up on the saddle and you're halfway through a loop and you go to take a drink and you're like, well, gee, my water bottle's empty, because you forgot to refill it. So what I do is I'll do a bag inside that box for each hold. And it tells me, you know, there's even a note, to reminding me to, you know, have some electrolytes or take your Tylenol at this hold, because I want to make sure I'm staying ahead of any issues. And I'll put, you know, the fresh bottles of water in there, or the note will say, refill your water bottle, so that I go in the cooler and put cold water in. But anything that will help keep things easy for you should be in that rider box. So anything that you need is separate from what the horse needs. Dave, let's talk about crew on the move.
Let's do that. Depending on the ride, sometimes you're lucky enough that you can crew right from your trailer. Other times you can't get that close, so you have to haul things. Picture on the left, got a cart with all their goodies in it going to or from. Makes things a lot easier, especially if you can't actually drive over to pick up your things after the ride's over. Picture on the right is Fort Valley from a couple years ago. Anybody that's ridden that ride in the 50 knows the finish line is actually about a half a mile from the crew area. And there's no water available out there. So if you want your horse to have water before you get all the way back, you have to take it out there yourself, which is what we're doing there. Hauling a little bit of water and goodies out for the horses. Next slide, Terry. Crew vehicles, same thing, just on a larger scale. The red truck, is that the one from, is that the Mexico picture?
Yep, that's the one in Mexico.
One of the junior girls that rides with us, they, her and her family were down in Mexico, and she did a couple little rides down there, and they said basically crew in there is the same as it is here. Food's a little different, but otherwise exact same process. You pile it all in the truck and go where you need to be. Some of the most fun is on like the old Dominion 100, where you're going from vet check to vet check. You're out all night just like the riders are. Pack the truck, go to a vet check, take out what you need, repack it, go to the next vet check. Learning to get everything in there and how it fits and how you can get it in and out quickly and what you need when. That's just something that comes over time. And as Lonnie says, we're still trying to get it right. It'll probably never exactly be there. It'll be different from one year to the next. Picture on the right is after a ride, everything from the vet check for, I think it was 4 horses that year, all loaded up and ready to go back to the trailers, which again, we're about a half a mile away. So,
Yep, it's a never-ending game of Tetris.
Anything that can make it easier for you, like a little pull cart or a wheelbarrow or 6 people to help you carry it, whatever it takes. It's always good.
Yeah, so let's talk about some of these creature comforts. You know, there's the things that you need to have. You need food, you need buckets, you need, to have a place to sleep. But then there are those things over time that are just going to make your life a teeny bit easier or nicer. As we've been, talking and preparing this discussion, everybody was kind of throwing in little things. And so this is kind of a list of what we've come up with. A chair is a nice to have. You don't have to have chairs, but boy, does it make it nice when, you don't have to sit on the ground. A cart or a wagon definitely makes it easier, even if you're just going from your trailer to the vet check that's going to be in camp. But especially if you have to park, a ways away and you have to drag things into the vet check, that cart comes in very handy. It also comes in handy when you have kids and dogs with you. As you can see, they're snuggling in the cart rather than sitting on the ground. A pop-up to keep you dry, that's another one. And that's probably one of the first ones we added to our stash of things. A saddle rack, having that in the crew area does make it really easy, rather than throwing your saddle on the ground and then trying to figure it all out while you're retacking to go back out. That saddle rack keeps things very, very neat. A sprayer system is another nice to have in really, really hot weather, and with those heavy-bodied horses that kind of retain their heat. Spraying that little mist of water on them while they're eating, after you've vetted through, keeps them cool. Insect repellent is another nice to have. We don't always think about it, but it is definitely something you want to toss in your bag. GPS watches are a nice gadget. They're pretty pricey, and they're not necessary by any means, but they are a nice to have if you want to keep track of your training rides, your competition, your, where you are in the world. They're convenient. This bottom picture on the right, Lonnie, I'm going to let you talk about that one because you threw that picture in there and I thought that was super cool.
This is really neat. So this is one of our trailers. Is we had our welder, and so yes, it's not easy to do, but the most useless space in your whole trailer is the front of the gooseneck. Is that you can't get to it. In order to get to it, you have to stand on a mounting block or something to crawl up into your gooseneck, and then you have to crawl forward on your stomach, and by that time you're pretty dang grumpy. So whatever gets up in the very front of your gooseneck tends to stay there forever, and you never check it. So we just had a door put in the front of our gooseneck that when you're standing in the back of the truck, you open it up and you can reach everything that's right in the front of the gooseneck. And so that's actually in this particular trailer, it's one of our most used spaces because you can, you know, a lot of times we'll put our cooking stuff there because all you got to do is hop in the back of the truck, open the door, and all your cooking stuff is there. Or you know, we've got a bucket that, or we've got a tote that just says utensils, and that's where all your coffee cups, your plates, your butane for your heater, things like that. And so that putting that door in the front of the nose of the gooseneck has totally changed the utilization, because that's usually total dead space. That is just a waste. You don't know what's up there. You don't know what's up there, and you just don't want to crawl on your stomach to get up front and find out what's there. And if you get somebody to put a door in the front of your gooseneck, you have a whole brand new space there.
Brilliant.
And
And
then
I'd
go
like
ahead.
to interject on the insect repellent. Something I learned when I was up in Maine and the mosquitoes were so bad. I always have the yard defogger in my trailer and in my tote for the vet check. And when you first set up your canopy, if you spray the defogger all underneath your tent, you'll have people come under your tent and they're like, how come you don't have any bugs? And they go back out and you're covered in flies, you come back under, and it will last the whole weekend.
Nice.
So that's a little trick.
That's
And
a good
again,
one.
going back to your watches, and I am the last person on the planet to talk about technology because I still use flip phone. But this is, again, it's necessary. But this past weekend we were down at a ride in South Carolina, and I rode by myself. I never ride by myself, but my partner's injured, so I rode by myself, and that I'm old enough now that makes me nervous because if I get separated from my horse, et cetera, et cetera. So just the dumbest thing, which you all do 10 times more than I do, but I kept my phone on me because if I get separated from my horse, I don't want my phone to run off. And then what she did is she put another phone on him so she can track him depending on if all your phones talk to each other. So she could track him as he went around the loop. That's totally not essential. I mean, it's entertainment and nothing else. But she could follow wherever he went. And if, God forbid, I should have been separated from him, she could just go get him with her phone. I mean, she could. So that was sort of, and I realized that's way out of, it is not necessary at all. And you guys know way more than I do how all these electronics communicate. But that was fun knowing that if he and I went different directions, she would be able to find me and she would be able to find him. And it was pretty comforting.
And there's a lot of GPS trackers that you can use. So those are pretty neat to put on a horse. So you can see one just in a pasture, how long they're walking, but also if you get separated from them, where are they? We have a comment that says small battery chargers for recharging at vet checks with cords is very helpful.
Yes, indeed. That is a brilliant add-on. Yes, and we use them quite regularly. Anybody else want to have any fancy things that they like that aren't standard?
Yeah, actually, I've got a tracker that the bear hunters use on their dogs. It's a collar that it's a GPS and it has a handheld unit. And I'll put that in Janice's camelback so I can tell where she's at. Even when she's training, she's out on the mountain, she's running. There's been times where she comes back and says, oh yeah, I saw a bear today. Well, okay. Now I can get within probably 3 or 4 feet of where she's supposed to be using that tracking device. It's expensive, but it's cheaper than finding a new wife.
And some
There you go.
that
For a minute there, when you said collar, I thought you said you were going to put the collar on Janice.
No, she told me she wouldn't wear that.
All right. Okay. We have provided you with just a sample of a checklist. This is Diane's checklist, and it encompasses everything that she brings with her, and things she has to take care of at home before she leaves. It even goes so far into grocery lists. And I'm just now noticing, Diane, you've even got your like bar stuff on here: wine, vodka, gin. Like you're doing it up.
That's the important stuff. And just this is actually laminated. At the beginning of each season, I do update it and add things or take things off. And then I laminate it and use a dry erase marker, and it honestly takes away all the thinking about camping, and stops me from forgetting to treat the toilet in the trailer before leaving and all those kinds of things. But, everybody has their own list. The idea is to have some organization in order to make it easier and not get there and be missing 2 or 3 things that you need at the ride.
Exactly. And again, there are lists all over the place. We considered putting links in here, but if you guys have found us, you're pretty resourceful and you know that you can find packing lists on AERC and Facebook. I see conversations all the time on the AERC Facebook page or the Northeast Facebook page, asking the community about what they put on their packing lists. We've shared with you some of our ideas and what we do. And now, you guys can start taking that and running with it. Lisa, do we have any other questions or does anyone have questions or things they need to know?
Yeah, so we just have another comment about tracking. One person says they have an Apple tag on their saddle, also on keys, so you can call it and find out if you lost it in your feed bag, which is a great idea. And then also we have, what is your refueling rule when traveling? So like, do you ever go below half a tank? And why would my trailer spare tire have really high tire pressure?
Ooh.
So two different questions, but
okay. So
good.
Dave, you're going to answer
when
the tire pressure
traveling,
question for sure.
Yeah, Dave's the tire pressure person, but it's also like if you're traveling, what do you do for refueling?
Well, I can answer that one.
The
We
refueling.
Go ahead, Dave.
No, you go ahead.
Okay, well, what we look at is kind of once we make a stop, we sort of look at, are we going from the middle of nowhere to the far east of nowhere, or are we passing through, any towns with actual names in them where we might have an opportunity to stop again? Because, the further and more remote you are, the less opportunity you would have to stop. So just sort of knowing what your path of travel is and kind of having a general idea of where you would want to stop, because some stops are just for potty and some stops are to fuel, and kind of mapping out a general idea of where you would want to do each of those things based on the remoteness of where you're traveling. So, make sure you don't get into the far reaches of nowhere and then go, oh, gee, I don't have any fuel. You'll want to hit that fuel at sort of the last known town that you go through.
And I also plan ahead. And the more you go to the same ride, you'll learn. I do 2 things. I try to time the fueling with the rest for the horses. So always 3-4 hours.
Yep.
And learning where the cheapest diesel is in the route. And if you start going to the same rides over and over again, you start learning which exit has the cheapest. And a lot of our GPSs now will, you'll say, gas, and it'll give you not only where the different diesel stops are, but what their price is, so you can plan ahead that way.
We also look for the places that have like the nicest restrooms. And we often will go like, an extra exit or so to get the type of food and beverages that we like. So planning is everything.
Absolutely. Yep. As far as the pressure in the spare tire, the only thing that comes to mind on that right offhand was 2 things really. A faulty pressure gauge, whoever was filling it, the gauge was reading lower than it should have, or possibly somebody going by memory thinking, well, this tire needs 90 pounds and they put 90 in when actually it should have only been like 70 or 80. So those are really the only 2 things I can think of. The reason it would be high on pressure. Usually the spare ends up low because most of the time people don't check them.
Yeah, but look at, I mean, depending on the quality and the weight of your tire, because our tires on our trailer was 130. We had to get 130 pound PSI, and we had to get a bigger air compressor to do that because they're bigger tires on a bigger trailer. So I would say most trailer tires are probably at 85, something like that. The ones with the small tires, like the more car tires, might be more towards 35 to 40. But in general, they're not supposed to lose pressure. I mean, in general, your spare tires is it's if you fill it to 90 pounds, then to stay that way. But look at the side, read the lettering on the side of the trailer and just see what it's supposed to be at. Because if it's higher than it's supposed to be, if it says, you know, this trailer is supposed to run at 90 psi and it's higher than that, then somebody just filled it. I mean, somebody just like Abe was saying, didn't pay attention when they filled it. But it may be a different tire. It may be a completely different tire, because if it's a load range G and it's a 14 ply tire or something, that thing is going to be some mighty pressure in there. So check the tire first, as it may just be a different tire.
True. And like my trailer is set up with LT truck tires on it right now at 80 pounds, whereas Bob Walsh's trailer, it's basically the same size tire, different tire. They run 90 pounds. So again, like Lonnie said, it does definitely depend on the tire. And all the tires tell you on the sidewall what the max pressure should be. And then on your trailer, you'll have a tag that tells you what they recommend that trailer to run at.
Awesome. Do we have any other questions?
All right. I don't see any more questions coming into the chat. If you do, please put them in. Any good truck apps that people use? And what do you mean with truck apps? Do you mean routes?
Some of the GPSs are made for diesel or tractor trailers, so they're a bigger truck. So they change the route to make it easier on the driver. So he's not running under low bridges. He's not running under narrow roads. Types of things. It just keeps you out of trouble. I don't use one. Every once in a while, I'll check the road with Google Maps and see what it looks like. But they do make a GPS for truck drivers. So if you've got a bigger rig, it does help.
The Garmin ones that actually say Garmin Diesel, those are the truck versions of it. I actually did get one years ago and used it. It was great because you could just hit regular route, or you could hit the truck symbol, and then it would send you on the truck routes or the better roads. I did not get it again when that one died. I got a regular one.
Yeah, and if you're not careful and if you're not paying attention, especially going like Old Dominion, it will send you down some back roads that you think you're in somebody's driveway. And if you've got a big rig, you'll never get in and out of there going that way. Definitely pick a setting for main roads if you're not sure. It'll keep you out of trouble a lot of times.
I ran into somebody that was using GPS to get to the Fort Valley ride, and they were coming off of 66, and they decided that they didn't like coming in from the north end of the fort, so they went around and down 81 to come over what is known as Woodstock Tower Road. And it's very ugly. The truck made it to about the second switchback before it died. And I got to do something in my bucket list that I'll never do again. I pulled a 2-horse across Woodstock Tower Road for her. Don't do it.
Nope.
More power to you.
It had
You
to get
definitely
off.
have to be careful about what these route apps tell you. Another person is recommending, I guess, Mud Flap for diesel. Routes to truck stops, so bigger truck stops, easier for bigger trailer rigs.
Okay.
I'll look at it.
Nice.
Thank you.
Definitely.
Okay, so Terry, so we have one more webinar in April?
In
May.
It's in May. I'm sorry. We're skipping April because we are all going to be busy with the No Frills Ride. Any of you on this webinar who are attending the No Frills Ride, who are interested in doing the intro ride, that's another good educational opportunity. So we hope to see you there for that. But our next webinar is in May. And in that webinar, we are going to go loop by loop on all of the Old Dominion rides, the 25, the 55, and the 100, and give you sort of a rock by rock description of each of those loops. We're going to talk statistics, how long historically it has taken people to finish those loops. We're going to give you our best tips and practices for strategies riding, strategies for crewing, strategies for surviving all of those different distances, and how to enjoy every minute.
And completing it safely.
Yes, absolutely. We're going to make sure that you have all the info you need to have one heck of a good time. And I think, do I have the date? Give me a second. March, April, May. That will be on May 16th. So 7 p.m. on May 16th is when you'll get all the things that you ever wanted to know about the Old Dominion Rise. And if there are no more questions, we thank you very much for joining us. If you have anything else you'd ever want to know, you can email us. You can find us at the No Frills Ride. We are always happy to meet new people. Diane is the manager. She always has a fancy setup right when you come in. We're usually right across the street from her. Dave and I have a big group of people. Can't miss us. We're loud and obnoxious. Lonnie usually kind of hides out, but you'll see her wandering around. And same for Bob and Lisa. They're always there. So thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you next time.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you
Thanks.
so much, everyone.